I was in the second SUV, not the armored one up front. That's where Trump sat, his window cracked just enough to let in the desert wind, like he was still trying to prove the heat didn't bother him. But I had a clear view. The convoy was 6 vehicles deep, crawling across a dusty road 20 clicks from the Israeli border with Yemen. The sky above us was pure white, that kind of cloudless pressure that feels like it's holding something back, that we were heading straight into it. Now, to be clear, this wasn't a state visit. Not officially. No flags. No press. No live feed on Fox. Just a heavily secured, diplomatic intervention, the kind that gets planned behind closed doors when everyone else is already shouting war.It started a week earlier. The Houthi forces, radical, well-armed, and unpredictable, had launched another strike on Israeli territory. This time it was bigger. Precision drones. Direct hits. Civilians caught in the fire. The region was ready to explode, and the White House was running out of voices who could walk into that storm and talk both sides down. So Trump made the call. "I've dealt with worse," he said on camera, chin lifted just enough to catch the good lighting. The art of the deal works anywhere. Some laughed. Some groaned. But others, the ones who remembered his term, knew better. Whatever you thought of Donald Trump, he had a strange way of getting in the room when nobody else could. That was the plan: talk to Israeli commanders. Meet Mossad. Then cross into neutral ground to broker a ceasefire with the Houthis. 3 days, tops, but the thing about plans, they only work when the other side plays fair. We reached a checkpoint at 14:06 local time. It was barely more than a concrete slab and a rusting metal gate, manned by what looked like Israeli border agents, at least from a distance. They waved us through with the kind of ease that makes you nervous. No inspection. No radio chatter. The lead SUV, Trump's, was the first to pass, the second followed, the third didn't. There was a flash. Just one. No boom. No flame. Just a short circuit in the nervous system. Radios dead, engines stalled, satellite feeds cut, and then, they came out of the sand, Houthis, not rebels in sandals. These were trained. Covered. Armed like ghosts of another war. Within seconds, the convoy was surrounded, tires slashed, weapons raised, instructions barked in Arabic through voice modulators. Our agents moved fast, but not fast enough. Guns up, eyes locked, fingers twitching. We could have started a war right there if the order had come. But it didn't. Because they weren't there to kill anyone, they were there to take someone. The back door of Trump's SUV swung open. He stepped out slowly, eyes narrow behind his aviators. Even now, even in that moment, there was no panic. Just calculation. "Who sent you?" he asked, voice like gravel. That a masked figure stepped forward, taller than the rest, with an insignia etched in red across his vest. That he didn't answer. That he just lifted a hand and pointed. At Trump. The next 30 seconds moved like cement. 2 agents lunged, shots fired. None fatal, and just like that, the president, former, yes, but still a symbol, still a target, was gone. Dragged into a vehicle, thrown under a tarp, and driven off-road into the dust. No trail. No trackers. Just silence. That we were alive. But history had just split in half. News hit the U.S. like a lightning bolt. Trump kidnapped by Houthi forces in undeclared zone. $1 billion ransom demand issued to U.S. government. Military on high alert. White House in crisis. The Pentagon scrambled. National Guard called in. Every branch of the U.S. military was suddenly staring at the same question: do we launch a rescue, or do we risk a funeral? People rioted in D.C. Panic buying. Protests. Talk radio lit up like Christmas, and through it all one line from the Houthis kept echoing on every channel: $1 billion, or Trump dies. Back at CENTCOM, the Joint Chiefs wanted a full strike. Shock and awe. Drones. Boots. Bombs. But someone else, quieter, sharper, leaned into the silence and asked, what if that's exactly what they want? Because if the U.S. Army marched into Houthi territory with tanks and flags, if a single boot hit the wrong piece of sand, Trump was as good as gone. They needed something smaller. Something invisible. They needed the Secret Service, not the ones in suits and sunglasses at campaign rallies, the other ones. The ones you never see, the ones who don't speak in press briefings because they never leave witnesses, and that's where the story changed, not with bombs. Not with parades, but with 5 agents in black, dropped under radar, tasked with finding and extracting a man who'd once been the most powerful figure on Earth. One shot. One mission. One rule, don't be seen. And don't come back without him. The operation had no name. No press release. No medals waiting at the end. Just 5 people in black, dropped under the radar somewhere in the Yemeni desert, with one mission: find Donald Trump and bring him home alive. The world was holding its breath. Washington had gone dark. And the only people who knew what was about to happen were already breathing recycled air in a modified Black Hawk 300 feet above a war zone. They weren't military. Not exactly. This was a hand-picked team from a branch of the Secret Service most Americans didn't even know existed. Not the ones who guarded podiums and shook hands with senators, the other ones. The ones who trained to walk through buildings that weren't supposed to exist, speak languages that didn't appear in CIA databases, and pull targets out of situations before anyone knew they were there. 5 of them. No names, no ranks. Just code signs: Ash, Delta, Sparrow, Flint, and their leader Vok. Their drop point was 15 miles southeast of Sana'a, what satellite recon believed was a Houthi encampment carved into a hillside, part cave, part fortress, all shadow. No roads. No towers. No obvious weaknesses. And inside, somewhere past steel doors and rifle lines, was Trump. The Houthis hadn't moved him far. That was their mistake. Arrogance. They thought hiding him in plain sight was safer than transporting him through shifting borders. And they didn't expect America to go quiet. They expected an airstrike, a flex, a show of muscle. Instead, they got 5 ghosts moving like vapor through the sand. The first challenge wasn't getting close. It was getting in without being seen. The second was getting out without leaving a body count behind. That wasn't for morality. That was for leverage. If a single guard turned up dead, the hostage could disappear forever. So they moved without a trace, underground sensors disabled, heat signatures blurred, comms scrambled. They arrived at the edge of the compound 3 hours before dawn. Inside the compound, Trump was being kept in a reinforced storage room, no windows, one steel door, one rotating guard every 20 minutes. No visible injuries. They weren't hurting him. They were preserving the prize. He hadn't spoken to anyone except a translator, hadn't asked for food. Just water. And according to one overheard report, he'd said the same thing 3 times: they'll come. You'll see. At 3:17 local time, they came. Flint cut the power. Delta took the tower's camera grid offline. Sparrow neutralized the outer perimeter with non-lethal disruptors. Ash breached the side structure using a signal mimic, one of those black devices the world doesn't know how to name yet. And Vok, silent through the whole insertion, led them straight through an unguarded maintenance tunnel into the heart of the building. 3 minutes later, they stood outside the steel door. It took them 6 seconds to open it. Trump looked up from the metal bench, blinked once, and nodded like they were 5 minutes late to a lunch meeting. No press, he said. Vok didn't smile. No witnesses either, sir. Then it got complicated. A patrol passed early. One of the guards noticed the scrambled feed. Gunfire erupted near the north corridor, not aimed, but panicked. The entire camp lit up like a firework in slow motion. Flashlights. Radios. Shouts. The exfil plan was ruined. The extraction route was already crawling with men carrying Russian rifles and borrowed rage. Plan B wasn't ready. There was no plan C. So Vok made a call nobody expected. They didn't go out, they went deeper in, through the lower tunnels. Past old munitions storage. Into a storm drain that hadn't been touched since the Civil War began. It was a risk. But it was dark, narrow, and unmonitored. And it led to a dry riverbed 3 miles west of the camp. They crawled through that space for 28 minutes, Trump never said a word. At 4:12, the team emerged into the night, covered in mud, sweat, and silence. An unmanned drone swept in low, dropped a decoy beacon, and flared out. The evac chopper arrived 3 minutes later, just long enough to make the wind feel like hope. Trump climbed aboard dollars.As. They lifted off. A blast echoed behind them, not from the Americans, but from the Houthis themselves, confused and furious, detonating charges to flush out shadows that had already vanished. By the time the sun rose, he was back across the border. Unharmed. Alive, and the world didn't know it yet, but the president was about to speak again, and this time, he wasn't coming for a deal. When Trump returned to U.S. soil, the country wasn't cheering. It was holding its breath. The footage of his extraction hadn't been released. There were no clips of soldiers. No explosions. Just a blurry satellite image of his convoy crossing into Israeli territory at dawn, and one statement from the Pentagon: the former president is safe. The situation is under control. That was all, but the country wanted more. They wanted payback. Across every network, Americans weren't asking if there would be a response. They were asking when. Because this wasn't just about Donald Trump being taken hostage, it was about what that symbolized. A former U.S. president captured by a militant group on foreign soil, dragged into the desert, held like a bargaining chip. And the world saw it. That couldn't go unanswered. Inside the Situation Room, Trump sat at the far end of the table, flanked by military officials, intel chiefs, and 2 ex-generals who'd come out of retirement just to see what he would do next. No one was smiling. The room felt more like a courtroom than a war council. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't slam the table. He just looked each of them in the eye. They made a bet, he said. They thought we wouldn't do anything. That we'd blink. That we'd worry about politics, optics, re-election. They thought America wouldn't fight unless it was attacked first. Well, guess what? I was America when they took me. No one interrupted. People like that, he continued, they don't understand diplomacy. They understand strength. And we just showed them we know how to whisper. Now we show them what happens when we stop whispering. The plan didn't come from the Joint Chiefs. It came from a smaller team, a rapid strike cell built to handle threats that lived outside the usual rulebook. No invasion. No ground war. Just precision. The operation was codenamed Dagger Rain. The objective: take down the Houthi chain of command clean, fast, and quiet before they could regroup, retaliate, or disappear. Within 24 hours, assets were in place. MQ-9 Reaper drones took position over northern Yemen, equipped not just with missiles but with real-time facial targeting systems. Cyber teams locked onto Houthi communications phones, walkie-talkies, even runners with paper notes. The U.S. wasn't just watching them. It was inside their thinking, and then, without a press briefing or warning shot, the storm hit. The first strike came at 3:42 local time, a weapons depot hidden under a mosque courtyard in Saida. It never lit up. Just collapsed inward like a stage curtain. No civilian deaths. No trace. 10 minutes later, 3 blacked-out helicopters dropped a joint special operations team into the mountains west of Al-Jawf. Their target, a command cell responsible for the planning of Trump's capture. They were asleep when the doors blew open. Not one of them made it to a radio. Trump didn't watch the strikes on a monitor. He sat with his back to the screen, listening to briefings from the agents who'd planned the hostage rescue. For every confirmed strike, he asked the same 2 questions: is it confirmed clean, and is the chain breaking? It was by day 3, 4 Houthi leaders had been captured alive. 2 more were confirmed dead. Their communications web collapsed. Internal factions splintered. For the first time in 5 years, the Houthis lost control of their northern corridor. Still, Trump wasn't done. He authorized a final phase, a coordinated cyber and psychological strike, aimed not at missiles or outposts, but trust. Messages were seeded into rebel comms, exposing secret alliances, backdoor payments, and betrayals inside their own ranks. One broadcast was intercepted mid-command, showing a field officer burning his own maps. Paranoia spread faster than any drone. The Houthis went silent, and for the first time since the capture, Trump stood before a camera, not a press room, a small, secure room in Arlington. Just one camera, one mic, one flag behind him. This wasn't about me, he said. It was about what happens when you touch the symbol of a free nation and think there won't be a price. I didn't come back angry. I came back focused. He paused. I gave them a choice. They made the wrong one. Now we've reminded the world, the United States never begs. It never runs. And it never forgets. The message was clear, the war wasn't over, but the balance had shifted, and whatever came next, America would no longer be walking in the sand. By the time the fourth day ended, the headlines were no longer about Donald Trump being taken. They were about what the United States did about it. The international press scrambled to keep up. Some couldn't believe it, a surgical retaliation with 0 civilian deaths, 6 Houthi leaders removed, and not a single American boot left behind in Yemen. No invasion. No collapse. Just precision and pressure, executed so fast the world didn't have time to protest. In London, anchors called it, a masterclass in modern warfare. In Berlin, cautious praise turned into private admiration. Even in France, where Trump had long been a favorite media punching bag, a primetime debate ended with one phrase repeated across the screen: say what you want, but that man just rewrote the rules. But not everyone was clapping. In Tehran, the mood turned cold. Iranian officials issued a carefully worded statement condemning the reckless escalation of force, but inside the walls of power, there was something else: nervous recalculation. The Houthis had long served as Iran's shadow in the Arabian Peninsula. Their strength, even if unofficial, was part of a broader game. And now, in a matter of days, a major U.S. counterstrike had neutralized them without warning, and without direct confrontation. Worse, it made them look slow. In Beijing, the story was studied, not spoken about. Analysts dissected the American play: non-state actors, minimal footprint, media control, message dominance. It wasn't just military. It was narrative warfare. China had spent years building its own image of calculated control, and now, in less than a week, Trump had stolen the stage with something that looked like chaos, but landed with surgical calm. And then came the message from Moscow. A single line, leaked through unofficial channels: he may be out of office, but he's not out of the game. Back home, something even more unexpected happened. The public didn't just approve. They rallied. Polling numbers jumped by double digits overnight. Networks that once mocked Trump now struggled to frame him. Talk radio flipped. College campuses started asking new questions. Even late-night comedians, those who once made careers roasting him, paused their punchlines. One viral video said it best: he was captured. He was humiliated. He came back. He didn't shout. He didn't tweet. He just flipped the board and walked away with the pieces. It wasn't just Trump's image that changed, it was his position. Senators who had distanced themselves suddenly found reasons to visit him at Mar-a-Lago. Foreign leaders sent private messages. One European prime minister even requested a discreet meeting off the record, to better understand his approach to unconventional diplomacy. And through it all, Trump said little. He declined interviews. He ignored op-eds. His social feed went quiet, but something was moving. Behind the scenes, his team began rebuilding, not campaign style, not political. Strategic. Global. He met quietly with military advisors, business moguls, even foreign liaisons from countries that once turned away. He wasn't just regaining influence, he was building leverage. But the world wasn't done reacting, because deep in the tribal territories, among the fractured remains of what was once a unified Houthi command, a vacuum had formed. And as history always teaches, vacuums don't last long. Within 2 weeks, a new name began circulating in encrypted channels. Not a group. A person, codename, Rayad, meaning, thunder. He wasn't from the old Houthi line. He wasn't a known warlord. But he was dangerous, charismatic, and furious. Intelligence showed he had broken off from the main faction before the capture, disagreed with the leadership's restraint. He believed in visible revenge. He believed Trump's survival was a cosmic mistake. And now, with the old guard shattered, he was rising fast. He started recruiting. Not just Yemenis, but mercenaries, radicals, and those who believed America had gone too far. His message was clear: they took our leaders in the dark. We'll take theirs in the light. For now, he had no army. No aircraft. No state sponsor, but he had followers, and unlike the Houthis before him he didn't want a ransom that he wanted an example.At Langley. Analysts were already watching his rise. One of them, a former field operative, typed one sentence into his report log: our ad doesn't want leverage. He wants legend. And that makes him the most dangerous kind of leader. The question now wasn't whether America would respond again.It was whether it would see the next hit coming, and for Trump watching it all unfold from his office, backlit by gold trim and silence, one thing was becoming clear: the first chapter was rescue, the second, retaliation, but the third, might be war. He started with an explosion. Our ad, the rising phantom of the desert, didn't make demands. He didn't send a warning. He didn't ask for money or hostages. He just launched a drone, packed with explosives over the U.S. consulate in Riyadh. It hit the roof. No casualties. Just a message, loud. Unmistakable. 5 hours later, Trump appeared on screen. Not in a studio. Not in a press room. On a military base, wind ripping at the collar of a bomber jacket. No teleprompter. No speechwriter. We didn't come looking for you, he said. You came for us. You showed us who you are. Now, we'll remind you who we are. There were no further comments, only action. Our ad was found 18 hours later hiding in a mountain compound near the Omani border. No press. No delays. Just a drone, a single strike, and a silence that followed like a closed door. It wasn't loud, but it was final. That night, Trump posted one sentence on his official channel: don't make us come twice. The world didn't ask what it meant. It already knew.